One.
Welcome, everyone. We're so glad you're here today. We're going to let people in from the waiting room. And as folks are getting seated and comfortable in the Zoom, and we are sharing live on Facebook, we'll give a couple of minutes for everyone to arrive, but we are so grateful that you are all here today with us to take urgent action on climate justice and creation justice. There is so much moving in Congress right now so quickly that we wanted to give you some congressional updates and some opportunities to reach out to your representatives in Washington, D.C. as they make some of the most important decisions of their terms and time, and of course, in our history of humanity as we prepare for what is to come with regards to legislation that can help protect the people and places that we love. So thank you again for everyone who is joining us. We're just giving a couple of more minutes as you come in. If you're on Facebook Live and you have an organization that you are able to share this recording, please do share it on your personal feed or on your organizational feed, or share it with your friends and Messenger. So all of you, even those of you that are in the Zoom meeting, if you want to go onto your phone and go to NCIPL's North Carolina Interfaith Power and Light's Facebook page, we are streaming live and we want to reach as many people as possible so that we can engage in this important time in congressional history as we work and pray to have climate policy finally in the United States that will make a difference, as I said, to protect the people and places we love. We're just going to give it one more minute as more people are coming into the Zoom room. And as you come into the Zoom room, and if you'd like to do this, if you're all watching on Facebook, we want to ground ourselves and really connect to this glorious earth that we are held so closely to by the forces of gravity, by the forces of love. And so if we'll just ground ourselves, you can put your feet flat on the ground or on the floor and just take a deep breath in through the nose, out through the mouth. Take 2 more breaths in and out, and in and out. We prepare ourselves for what is to come, knowing what we are called to do as people of faith and conscience at this most critical time in our country's history, as we work together to act for creation and act for justice. So I invite you to introduce yourself into the chat. And again, you're welcome to do this on our Facebook page as well. I am going to introduce myself. My name is Susanna Tuttle. I am the director of the North Carolina Council of Churches Eco-Justice Connection. And that is our work to connect all of our programs that address the social justice, environmental justice, and policy justice, creation justice issues that we work on in North Carolina. And for over 10 years now, I've been directing the North Carolina Interfaith Power and Light campaign as part of the North Carolina Council of Churches. And I'm very, very excited to lead in partnership with all of the organizations that you see on the screen here. Creation Justice Ministries, our national partners, North Carolina Council of Churches, of course, the Interfaith Creation Care of the Triangle, Georgia Interfaith Power and Light, who is an ongoing partner in this work, and our friends in the western part of the state, the Creation Care Alliance of Western North Carolina. So thank you to our partners. I am speaking to you currently from the land of the Occaneechi Band of the Saponi Nation, and otherwise known as Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And I invite those of you that are connecting with the Indigenous peoples on the land that you find yourself working and playing and loving. So if you'd like to name that in the chat, that would be great as well. We also want to learn where you're located in relationship to any faith community or organization that you work with closely, so that we can continue to build relationships across the state in that way as well. And if you're not in North Carolina and found out about this event through our partners in Georgia, welcome. And we look forward to getting to know all of our brothers and sisters across the Southeast region. So the purpose of today's call is to actually make some calls. That's what you were called here to do. Thank you for the very short notice. We are working very closely with the Climate Action Campaign nationally to demand that Congress take big, bold action on climate. And I have a lot of updates to run through today. So I wanted to start by giving an overview. I'm going to drop a resource toolkit that you can be following along with as I go through the high level points of what is in the infrastructure and budget reconciliation pieces of legislation that are literally being written as we speak. So we're going to go through a slide deck first, then we're going to stop sharing our screen so that we can see each other, so that together we can have a kind of phone baking experience. And I have a wonderful platform that is hosted by Creation Justice Ministries that you're going to be able to fill out, and it's going to directly connect you with your members of Congress. So hopefully that's going to work smoothly, but let's start with the presentation. So if you can go to the next slide, please. Okay, we have a political window of opportunity, as I said. Let me be clear, this is also a moral window of opportunity. So here's what needs to happen over the next 2 weeks. These next few weeks are pivotal for advancing transformational policies to electrify our transportation sector, protect and restore public lands, build resilience in our communities, decarbonize our electricity, and create millions of good paying jobs. What could be better? Next slide. Today, we will answer the following questions. What is included in the bipartisan infrastructure bill that Congress is considering? What is the Build Back Better budget framework? What are the next steps in Congress? And what actions can I take? Next slide. This bill passed the Senate a couple of weeks ago. It will likely be considered by the House by the end of the month. So what's in it? A lot, but not nearly enough. Next slide. You can see we are talking money here, or what I like to refer to as climate finance. So looking at electrical vehicle charging at $7.5 billion, $7.5 billion for low carbon, zero emission vehicle school buses and ferries, $21 billion for addressing legacy pollution, $54 billion for water infrastructure, $17.4 billion for ports and waterways. Next slide. To break down the transportation infrastructure bill aspect, you can see that these are some of the specifics. Each of you are going to receive a copy of the slide deck if you haven't already. So these numbers are going to collectively compile into an overall budget. But we wanted to show you some of the breakdown and some of the exciting aspects of the infrastructure Build Back Better plan with regards to transportation. Next slide. Resiliency and communities. This is something that we've been working very closely on here in North Carolina, particularly in relationship to what is taking place with the issues and impacts of the climate emergency at our coastal communities. But in the larger national plan, in looking at tribal climate resilience, adaptation, and community relocation, planning, design, and implementation. This is such an important part of what we need to be advocating for as people of faith, and from a justice perspective, to protect and support our Indigenous communities all around the country that are getting hurt first and worst in very, very vulnerable positions, and we need to invest in those communities and make sure they are supported. Flood mitigation assistance is obviously critical. We're seeing that time and time again. We're in the middle of it right now. Ida obviously is long-term recovery as Nicholas heads towards, Hurricane Nicholas heads to, well, it's now a tropical storm, heads to Louisiana. Just the increased amount of flooding, that was unprecedented in how Ida went all the way up through Tennessee, all the way up into New York, and the extreme amount of flooding, the amount of investment that needs to take place around the language and definition of climate finance is so critical right now. Building resilient infrastructure in communities is obviously a key part of this. And then another significant aspect that directly impacts us on the coastal communities as well is NOAA's National Coastal Resilience Fund. Next slide. Here is where there is a lot for climate resilience, but not nearly enough. So this is a lot, again, a lot of numbers, a lot of in-depth information that we don't have time to go into right now, but as the members of Congress and their staff are looking at the different pieces, the whole point that we want to make is that we need all of this. Even what was proposed is less than actually what is needed. So we cannot be cutting away. I know that there's been a lot of discussion about how this is being scaffolded and actually butchered to remove the climate finance pieces of these important pieces of legislation. And what we're calling on our members of Congress to do is to put the people and the places that we love first and foremost in their decision making during this time. Next slide. So this is an environmental remediation piece. So you can see the breakdown of information there. This is constant, ongoing. This is so much fits into the language of loss and damage of what we've already lost and what needs to be happening in remediation and reclamation. So these Superfund remediation sites can never have enough investment. And we know that they're increasing and the issues are increasing around them. Next slide. What is the Build Back Better budget framework? This plan will make once in a generation investments in clean energy and infrastructure that can help tackle the climate crisis and advance environmental justice in communities across the country. So congressional leadership is proposing up to $3.5 trillion over the next 10 years. That number may seem very large. I know that if you're watching a lot of the news heads right now and some of the invited guests from the members of Senate that have been talking about this number as just something that is impossible, that we can't possibly afford. To be honest and truthful, this number is actually much lower than we need to commit in order to actually address the climate emergency. So when President Biden and his administration put together the $3.5 trillion package, they were actually being very conservative in estimating those numbers and how that all breaks up in the billions of dollars in the different sectors that we just went through. We have to be clear that there is no better time to make this investment. And we all know on this call and all of you watching online that it is more expensive to not take action than it is to make the investments up front. Next slide. So this brings us to the next big policy item facing Congress right now, the Build Back Better budget framework. Say that 4 times, Build Back Better budget framework. This is the reconciliation budget you've been hearing a lot about in Congress. This is where it is the real opportunity to make substantial investments in climate mitigation, resilience, and other environmental priorities. The reality is that the $3.5 trillion is not enough, as I just said, to make the transformative changes called for by climate scientists. But it is an absolutely imperative investment, and it must pass. So here's what this framework includes: tax credits and funding for many important initiatives. Next slide. So we're looking at some of the other climate and environmental investments of ocean and coastal protection and restoration funding. No kidding, right? That's a no-brainer. Clean electricity payment program, which would provide financial investments to utilities that deliver cleaner electricity each year. Genius, right? Of course we need this. Climate research, yes, ongoing forever and ever and ever, and civilian climate corps and other workforce development. This is the time to actually employ people in jobs that are benefiting the planet, not hurting it. And part of this Build Back budget will make that happen. Yes, next slide, perfect. Environmental justice investments in climate equity, weatherization, investments in clean transportation, electrification of the federal fleet, including the United States Postal Service, and methane polluter fee. Next slide. Pools of money have been distributed to House committees. They are deciding how they will be allocated in a final bill. So the Senate passed the bipartisan infrastructure package with the support of 19 Republicans. Very, very exciting. I think you'll recall that was a proud moment in Biden's administration with the bipartisan work that took place. And both the Senate and House are moving forward on negotiating and writing bills to implement the Build Back Better budget framework. Votes on both are expected the week of September 27th. This came a little bit earlier and a bit of surprise to everyone when Speaker Pelosi announced that she wanted to move this quickly because we need to make the investments and do the work starting October 1st. And so many of us, including those of us that have been working on congressional engagement through the Climate Action Campaign, thought we had a little bit of a longer time. I want to make the connection to why, how these legislative bills pan out and what is decided upon and the commitments that we make both financially and through carbon emission strategies is actually what we will bring to Glasgow for the COP26, for the upcoming UN negotiations that are taking place. And it is what it's what we're going to be presenting as our plan. And as if you'll recall, during the Global Climate Summit that President Biden hosted during Earth Week on Earth Day in April this year, he released a nationally determined contribution to the Paris Agreement of what the United States was committing to with regards to domestic carbon reductions. And that pledge was to reduce our carbon emissions by 53% by 2030. What is in these pieces of law is how we will get to 53% of carbon emission reductions. So if we don't include climate finance and climate policy in these bills, we are basically going to be showing up to the UN negotiations with an empty bucket. And that is unacceptable. We are the United States of America. We have to do our fair share. We're not even close to really showing up on a global scale for what we should be doing to help not only our own country reduce our carbon emissions, but to support developing countries and countries that are not responsible for the historical amount of emissions that the United States has released over time. So it is our time now to take action, call our members of Congress. That is what we gathered here to do today. And so again, thank you to our partners with Creation Justice Ministries, Interfaith Creation Care of the Triangle, Georgia Interfaith Power and Light, Creation Care Alliance. I hope if you're on this call and you want to identify yourself with any of those organizations, that would be fabulous too. So thanks so much, Rachel from North Carolina Council of Churches, our communications director, for running the slideshow during this time. We're going to go ahead and stop sharing the screen so that we can see each other. And if you want to see everybody, you can go up into the right-hand corner of your screen and click on Gallery View if you're not already there. So I want to give a huge shout out to those of you that were able to join us with almost no notice that this was happening. So you might have received an invitation literally half an hour before this call happened. And so you are climate justice warriors and champions. And for those of you that weren't able to join us at 11 a.m. today, we will be sharing the recording. You can go to Facebook Live and share it there. We hope you'll get the information that you need to make your calls whenever it works for you. Quite honestly, we should be putting in calls every single day right now, because the whole purpose of our movement is to make sure that faith voices and the moral call to act on climate is heard and cannot be stripped away by powerful forces that are trying to take away this opportunity in this congressional moment for reasons that are far beyond my comprehension, but are very invested in some alternative what I refer to as toxic theology that is making decisions that is not helping communities and is not caring for creation and is not protecting the people and places we love. So next steps are to take action. So I am going to drop a couple of resource links into the chat. Oh, I get to look at the chat now to see where everybody is calling in from. Wonderful. Thank you so much. So if you received my email, and if you didn't, I'm going to drop this link into the chat. This is the participant toolkit. This is live, folks. So we're taking action live. This is like we're in a real moment here. I just dropped into the chat the participant toolkit, so we can all open that together. And actually, Rachel, before we make our calls, because we want to be able to visually see each other making our calls, maybe if you could pull the participant toolkit up in case there's anybody on the phone that's having trouble pulling the document up, and you could share your screen again to walk through that. That might be helpful. I know sometimes when folks are on iPads or under other devices, it's harder to see that. And if you could zoom in a little bit, that would be great. Perfect. Great. Hope that's helpful for folks. So let's just quickly walk through this. This is a resource for you. You can see it's a faithful call in hour for congressional action. We're taking an hour today. It might not even take a full hour. But again, we hope people will use this toolkit vigorously over the course of the next 2 weeks. We have the blurb, if you want to share this, and these 2 top paragraphs to explain why we're doing this. That's a good overview that Creation Justice Ministries has put this together for us. So our call instructions, when we're ready to make our calls, and I'm going to drop that into the chat right now. Let's see here. I'm going to put that back into the chat. If you can open up, and we'll switch over to that in a moment. This hyperlink that I just linked into the chat, and we'll put this into the Facebook live post once this Zoom call is over, so everybody can have access to these resources. This will take you to the platform that Creation Justice Ministries has created that will allow you to fill out this form. And you can see when you add your phone number, it will give you your representatives. And each of us have 3 members of Congress. And for those of us in North Carolina, we all share the same 2 senators, Senator Tom Tillis and Senator Richard Burr. And then depending on where we live in the state, we each have a different district House member representatives. So mine is Representative David Price. I know many of you are in the ICCT community area have Representative Deborah Ross. If you're living in Guilford County, you have Representative Kathy Manning. I see Penny on the line, and I know that she has Representative Greg Murphy. So if you feel that you want to drop who your representative is into the chat, that also will help us. But this will give you the direct call-in information. And if any of you are United Methodists on the call and want to use the United Methodist Women's call-in line, that is also available for you, and that is located in the link below the Creation Justice Ministries link. So these are really, really cool online platforms that make it super easy to make these calls. Hopefully it will work for you. If it does not, I'm soon going to open up everybody's mics so that we can have a conversation. So you'll fill out the form, take a moment to review the call script, which is available below and on the webpage. Practice saying it to yourself if you want. You can make it your own. You can say whatever you want to your member of Congress because they represent you. So speak your truth and your heart. And then when you're ready, click Take Action, and you will receive a call to your phone. Answer that phone call, listen to the short introductory message, and follow the prompts given to you over the phone. When you have finished your first message, press the star key to continue and don't hang up. You will be disconnected at the end after your calls. So let's see. If you get disconnected before making all 3 calls, you can look up your congressional representatives here and call their offices directly. So I am going to drop that in here at the chat, call reps directly. And this is a good link just to have all the time so that you can make your calls at any hour of the day. So the phone script, as I said, is at the bottom of this participant toolkit. And the other important thing that we need to be doing loud and proud as people of faith and conscience is using our social media platforms. Twitter has become quite a resource. And we know that members of Congress, and particularly their staff that are monitoring each of the representatives' Twitter feeds, are receiving lots and lots and lots of information. And we want to take over all of that noise with our call to act on climate. And so using the hashtags that we have listed here will get you into the threads that all of the members of the Climate Action Campaign and Climate Power and different organizations, Interfaith Power and Light, all of the major faith traditions that are working on climate action are using these hashtags. And so you can use all of them. You can use one of them. You can follow the conversation on the hashtags. If anybody wants to learn how to use Twitter, I will be happy to give an overview. I've gotten really good at it, and we can sign up for another training later this week, even if somebody wants to dive into how to use Twitter. It's the most effective in real time communicative tool that we've ever had to really directly impact what the members of Congress are receiving, what kind of information they're having. And then these are all of our partners' hashtags. Use your own hashtag. If you tweet at any of these hashtags and use them in your posts, each of the organizations will receive your tweet and we will retweet, like your tweet, and we'll keep the momentum going. That's really the power of Twitter. So yes, I will definitely, I see in the chat, happy, I'll look back and I'll definitely find a calendar time that can work, and maybe I'll record a video on how to use Twitter so anybody can view it at any time. So that is awesome. Okay, so everybody has the Take Action for Creation Justice form up, right? Is that true? Let's take down the shared screen and go back to the group that we have here. And if at any time you would like to come off mute or have a question, we do want, once you're ready and willing to go, pick up your phone, turn on your camera, stay on mute so that you can make your calls. And we want to see you making your calls and talking to your members of Congress. And you can be use as many flourishes as you like. This is being recorded. But if anybody has any questions, I want to open up the line, or you're having any trouble with the platform. And if it gets to be too many people talking at once, then we can go ahead and create a stack in the chat. That's the easiest thing, is put your name in the chat, and then I can start calling on you in order. But if anybody has any questions now, ready to go. And I can't wait to see those phones.
So is it actually, are you having conversations with them, or is it leaving a message on your behalf?
You never know. That's a great question, Hannah, and welcome, Hannah. Hannah is our Youth Leader Eco Justice Fellow with NCIPL this year. I'm so glad you're joining us today. So you don't know. We hope that a member of the staff will pick up. then you'll get to talk to a live person. That's most fun. I appreciate that. It could go directly to voicemail. That happens often. And another often thing that happens is that you get a busy sign. There are certain members, I will not name, that never pick up their phone. And that in itself, we want to record. If you are not able to get in touch with your representatives of Congress, that's a problem. You are their constituent. They need to be able to hear from you. So that's kind of what we're trying to document right now, is how many calls are we able to make? Who can get through? Are we leaving messages? And so that's what we want to know through this process.
And I got a question about the toolkit. Does this enable calls through your PC, or will you have to do that on your cell phone?
Ooh, great question. I don't know the answer to that. I don't use my computer to make calls. So if you want to try it that way, that would be helpful intel.
I've had experiences like that where it has been possible through the PC before.
Okay, cool. Why don't you start there and then give us some feedback, whether it works or not works. That'd be helpful for everybody else.
Okay.
Thanks. Other questions or comments? And if people want to wait until after this call to make calls, I know this is like sort of high pressure to try to make calls while we're all looking at each other. Some of what's really fun about that is that I can take a screenshot and show that we're all taking climate action as a group. But just the fact that we gathered today is something that I'm going to be communicating very, very clearly, definitely to our senators. I'll be writing to our senators that this action took place today, that people of faith and conscience are activated. We're calling on Congress to pass big, bold climate legislation. It's there for them. The plan has been written. The Build Back Better plan has been written. And so let's not deconstruct it. We don't need to. That's really, as we know, some very, very serious issues that we need to address around financing senators to support the fossil fuel industry. That cannot be what happens right now. We cannot let the dark money win. So we need to be the light and the action that holds people accountable. And because you're a person of faith, the ability to identify yourself as a person of faith and say, hi, I'm Susanna Tuttle. I'm a member of the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Larger Fellowship. I believe that we need to act on climate because, and then you say your whole story, or you say, I'm a member of Interfaith Creation Care of the Triangle. We are a collection of many, many congregations across your district region, and we are all calling upon you. So however you'd like to craft your story, and this is also something that we get better at the more that we do. And it also gives us, we all have lots of stories and wear lots of hats. So you literally could make 5 calls a day and introduce yourself in 5 different ways, because we all wear a lot of different identities. But that person of faith call to action is what really changes hearts and minds. And we want to be sure that they're hearing from us very loud and clear that this is a moral imperative to act on climate.
Something I just wanted to share that I recently found too that helps you get in touch with your representatives is there's this app that you can download on your phone called Causes, and you can just put in your information. It'll determine what your 3 major representatives are, and then you can pretty much have like a feed of different governmental, like political issues that are going on, and they have a lower part that says bills, and you can click on it and it'll show you the bills that are being talked about in Congress, and you can click on it and pretty much share what you would vote for it and add a comment, and they'll send the comments to your representatives.
Wow, that's amazing. Do you have that link available and could drop it in the chat?
I'll write the name of it and then I'll try to find the link for it.
Thank you. Yeah, any other resources like that are great. So we can wrap this up if folks want to make their calls at a different time, or we're all kind of on a communication circle now, and definitely like this evening we will be gathering. I'm glad to see Lynn, you're here from ICCT, and so many others of you that are a part of the meeting that's going to happen tonight to talk about faiths for climate and the actions that are going to be taking place in October as well. So there's so much happening, so much building up as we're on the road to the UN negotiations. What happens in Congress, as we said, in the next 2 weeks defines everything. This is a once in a generation, and I want to say multi-generation chance to really get it right. We still do have time. We have that number 2030 is looming, but we still have almost 8.5 years to make decisions that can really reduce our carbon emissions at the levels that we need to in order to be able to keep global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. There's a ton that we need to do, but the fact that you all showed up today is everything. So I'll just open it back up for one more minute or two of any questions, or I'd love to hear if Russell was able to get through on the computer. If you can email me afterwards. I don't need to take any more of your time. It's wonderful to be able to like come together when the time is called. And I often say congregations are not rapid response organizations. Ha ha ha, right? We make decisions about as slow as any group of people ever by consensus committee, and long as a former executive director of the North Carolina Council of Churches once said to me, we are relational people. We like to interact. We like to have dialogue. We like to eat and pray together. And so for us to move into direct action and hear that fierce urgency of now is also our time. We've never, I said this on the main stage of the Wild Goose Festival just a couple of weeks ago. The scientists have done their part. The environmentalists have done their part. We need to do our part. This really is a moral call to action. So please share these resources. I'm going to drop 2 more resources into the chat that can be helpful to you, I hope. The Climate Action Campaign, and if you're able to open this document, and Rachel, if you could pull up the document I just dropped into the chat that's on the AmericanProgress.org website. This is the compilation of all of the major environmental organizations that comprise the Climate Action Campaign and are really, really working with lobbyists, professional lobbyists on the Hill as we speak, who are hearing about the fact that we are calling in. They know that this is happening today. They know that all of you showed up today. They will register your calls. They need us to be doing this right now. So the climate test, the Build Back Better Act, must put us on a clear path to cutting pollution in half by 2030. If you just kind of quickly scroll up to this is the overview and of the slide deck that I just went through. It gives the updated details of each of those 5 major points of the clean energy tax credits. In red, you can see its information and details about numbers and finance and all of that for those of you that want to drill down into that. But the reality is that we need all of it. It's not even enough to what it is. So we need all of it. We don't have to become experts on it, but this kind of stuff is really cool. And you might have people in your congregations and neighbors and families that love to see this kind of resource. The last resource that I'll share, and Rachel, if you can, you're doing amazing. If you can also pull this up. This is the toolkit, and they call it a virtual fly-in toolkit, which is essentially what we're doing. You know, we're not all able to go up and meet with our members of Congress in person right now. The pandemic has really shut down those opportunities. I would be up there if I could be right now. But this is the resource toolkit that the Climate Action Campaign has put together that focuses on, if you say one thing, core guidance, general guidance, and it goes through and also gives you resources with regards to social media, the budget reconciliation talking points. So take some time in the next, day or two and craft your message and send a letter, send an email, make those phone calls. I feel like I'm in a telethon right now, and I am. This is the telethon for our life. So all these resources have been put together and are shared with you. Please share them far and wide. Have this conversation with your congregation and reach out to me at any time. Here is my email. And I will drop that into the chat, and I will send you anything I possibly can to help you, resource you to take the call that you already have as a person of faith and conscience. So thank you so much. Jane, you have a question.
Yes, I have a question. So you have given us resources for our personal senator and representative. However, my representative is Madison Cawthorn, and I really don't believe he is going to buy anything I say.
Yeah.
So who are other senators or representatives in the country whom we need to push?
Fantastic. Great question. I think it's very, very important for people of faith all around the country to make calls to Senator Joe Manchin and Senator Sinema, who is in, those are West Virginia and Arizona, respectively. So I'm going to drop back into the chat the link to get all of the information for all of the senators. Those are the two senators that are saying that we cannot afford this, that we're pushing it too fast, too quickly. There is no sense of urgency, which is like unbelievable. The climate emergency is the most urgent issue that we're all dealing with. And we recognize, even with this pandemic, that the global climate emergency is a global health crisis. And so they're intimately related. And just this idea that the United Nations are going to be meeting in Glasgow at the beginning of November, and that most of the global southern nations and island nations and the continent of Africa are not going to be able to attend due to lack of equity in vaccine distribution, that is urgent. So the messaging that they're using is all smoke and mirrors. They need to be spoken to. They need to be called out. They are lying to themselves and they are lying to the world. And if they're able to convince other members of Congress that we don't need this package, these packages, that is incredibly dangerous. And so we need to call them out on that. Unfortunately, because of the makeup of Congress right now, if even one senator votes against the package, it will not pass. So in the Democrats. So, we could do a 50-50 vote if we could get the bipartisan. I mean, it isn't bipartisan. It's just, we just need as many people to vote for this as possible to pass. But the power there, those are the two most powerful senators that are in opposition of this, of these bills right now. Representative wise, we have some champions in North Carolina. We have Representative Deborah Ross. If she's your representative, you can raise your hand. She has been a climate champion. This is her first term, and she's been speaking loudly about climate action, particularly in her leadership in co-sponsoring the bill that would end the moratorium on offshore wind in the Atlantic. She led that and brought in Representative David Rouser, who is a Republican in the Wilmington district area, and they partnered on that bill. So bridges are being built, and so calling on those two representatives would be wonderful. Representative Kathy Manning in the Guilford area, district area, Greensboro area, has also been coming out as a vocal supporter for climate action. We always have received great support from Representative Alma Adams in the Charlotte area. And of course, Representative David Price is great on our issues. He's a climate justice, social justice warrior. And they all deserve to be giving calls and to be thanked for really sticking their neck out, especially Representative Ross and Representative Manning in their first term. So a great strategy is to go ahead and thank people for doing what we're asking them to do, even before they have a chance to do it. So those are some examples. And then if you have friends and family in other states, there's of course other folks that we need to be pushing. So yes. And as Maurice put into the chat box here, a 50-50 equal vote, 50 in support, 50 in opposition of the package would actually pass the bill with Vice President Harris being able to be the deciding vote. So it's close. This is as we said, the charge of our life, to call for justice and the call for a once in a generation, multi-generation opportunity to finally have significant climate policy in the United States. Thank you for that question, Jane. I see people on the phone. This is exciting. So I'm going to take.
Could you repeat those two names for the senators, please? Joe Manchin and.
Right. It's Senator Manchin and Senator Sinema. Sinema. She is in Arizona, and my dear friend, Reverend Doug Bland, who is the executive director of Arizona IPL, is putting in calls every hour on the hour to Senator Sinema. So I can connect you directly with folks in Arizona IPL if you'd like that as well.
Hey, Susanna, can you hear me? Bob Rodriguez here.
Hi, Bob.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. I love this live phone meeting.
Well, I'm being pulled in 2 other conference calls right now. So, but I know this is important. So I'm letting these other work things talk. These other guys talk to each other. So if I were to recommendation for calls for like, so to look at what the American Progress write up, would that be the best thing to do? And just kind of condense that for calling. I know for us it's Tillis and Burr, but you know we still got to do. I'm still going to do it. And then I have already called up before, but I will call again. A Manchin and Sinema, and one of the two things I left for. I'm interested in what you would think. What would you suggest? And I'll to say 2 messages I left. But what would you suggest in terms of the guidance to go with?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to like have a dialogue, and as we say, as people of faith, we speak the truth and we seek the truth, and we don't believe that. The messaging that's coming out of the opposition for passing this legislation now with a sense of urgency is that there's nothing urgent about it. And that's just not the case. I mean, when we look at the different pieces of the charge and the requirement that in order to literally save humanity, that we have to take climate action today. And in order to even get close to being able to cut our emissions in half by 2030, we've got to get this passed 10 years ago, for goodness sake. So opening that conversation, I think, is really important, and then demanding an answer about why they don't think this is urgent, and then to go as far as really question what their motives are. I mean, I think that this is, I said going into 2021, that this is the summer of truth. A lot of truths are being told right now. And I think it's really obvious that anyone who would not support investing the climate finance that we need in order to protect the people and places that we love are being directed by other motivation. And I think it's unhealthy. We talked about toxic theology a bit. But it also is involved with a different kind of finance, right? There's a lot. This is all about money, and
the great God of money. Yes,
that's right. And so money should be used for good, and people of faith are the messengers for that. And so really holding them accountable for what they're being called by and why is our time. This is why this is our time. The science is there, the environmental impacts are there, the code red for the planet, IPCC reports, all of it is there. So what are we really talking about right now? This is calling out the truth.
Exactly that. I will do that. And I will also try to boil it down to really saying what price extinction? I mean,
Yes. Bob, you're good. You're so good at that. Yes. We all have our different skill sets. Mine is the What I Love campaign. You're really good with numbers.
Well, the other thing was, and that's exactly it. The U.S. economy is like 21, almost $22 trillion, and 3.5 trillion over 10 years is 350. That's like 1.4%, 1.5% per year. We can't afford our own survival for that. That doesn't make any sense. That's crazy.
That's right. No, this really isn't very much money that we're talking about at all. It's not enough, but we're going to take what we can get, and we have to at least pass this. So
absolutely.
Thank you for that. I see Lynn's hand up. Hi, Lynn. If you want to come off mute.
This is just great. Thank you for doing this. I wasn't listening for a while because I made a couple of calls.
I saw you.
And I identified an issue that might affect others, which is when the automatic voice says you are now going to be connected, it says you're now going to be connected to Senator Richard Maurice, which is his middle name. And I didn't realize that. And I got confused and I hung up. And then it was the same for Deborah Ross. And, it was Congresswoman Deborah something else. So
that's fascinating. That's so important. Thank you.
Just a little glitch there, but it's just an amazing system. Thank you.
Good. Well, thank you. I will share that with Creation Justice Ministries. It's a gift and absolutely a very, very good toolkit. I guess we're getting to get more personal with our representatives if we're getting to know their middle names. And, another exciting aspect, especially with the senators that I can just share, is that Senator Tillis identifies as Catholic. So if you have any Catholic friends out there and colleagues and neighbors, it's always helpful to, speak from the same place of theology and faith. Senator Burr is a Methodist, and so our Methodist friends are great messengers, but I mean, we all are because we're all voters. So it's really interesting to build those relationships across our faith traditions as well. That's a unique aspect of our lives, and getting to know people. One of my favorite things about visiting Senator Tillis's office all the time is it is known as the most dog-friendly office in the Senate building. And he has water bowls, and his dog comes, and his staff's dog is welcome to come. And I'm a dog lover, so that's a great way to connect. And certainly dogs are part of God's creation. And so I would hope that Senator Tillis, if you can hear me now, act on climate to protect our love of dogs. Everything that we love, that's what we're working to do, is to protect what we love. So. Yeah, well, we're coming up on the hour. I love seeing the phones go. It's just been an exciting time. I'll save the chat and go back. I see some people dropped their emails in here. I'm going to work on setting up a time to run through how to use Twitter. That will change your life in a really fun way. It's a great way to get news, and it's a great way to spread news. So we're all about spreading the good news, and Twitter is available. Tweeting it is a way to do it. So if there are no more questions, I have a closing. One more, Hannah. Great.
So, I mean, just out of curiosity and from your experience, if a lot of, with the phone calls, if it's not even received, or if they don't answer the call, or it's busy, or you leave a message, how is it effective? Because how can we even know? I feel like a lot of them probably don't even listen to it.
So that's a great question. And that's another way that we need to be calling out our representatives. If they are inaccessible to us, that needs to be known. As we're moving into the 2022 election cycle, as 501c3s and as nonprofit churches can advocate on behalf of issues, not on behalf of candidates, but we can also tell our individual stories as voters. And so if you're trying to reach someone who represents you in Congress and they're not making it available, we need to make that very public. And I do see Dennis Testerman here. Thank you, putting into the chat. Anyone else able to get through to Senator Burr? The phone tree would not respond to option 1 number to leave a message. Dennis, let me ask, were you able to try the direct number, I could go back into that link that is the call the rep directly. I'm curious if the senator's office is just not answering calls, or if the okay, Lynn Lyle, great, for my CCT, got through to Burr's voicemail. So
Got through to Susanna. Took like 4 times to get through.
okay.
It made it extremely difficult. And then that closes. The thing is, this thing you asked, can you call through your computer? No,
Yeah.
It sends you to it directs you to your phone, but then it starts over with Burr every time. So I'm just going to call individually.
Okay, yeah, obviously the platform is not perfect. So and this feedback is really, really helpful. So we will get through the glitches and good. Oh, and Lynn also says she got through to a staffer in Representative Ross's office. So you got to talk to a live person, which is really exciting. And so as we get more engaged in how we should be regularly interacting with our representatives, they should hear from us all the time. They're there to represent us, literally and figuratively. Learning about how available they are should be a very, very important reflection on what kind of job they're doing in Congress. So, and it looks like Dennis was able to speak with the staff in Tillis's and Hudson's office. Well, that's awesome. People are answering the phones and they appreciate you calling. And there is a official record of that. And I will pass that on to our partners who are also in those offices in person, doing the work on behalf of those of us that live in the state.
So
Very,
do
very
the
exciting.
Do the staffers, you said like they write it down so
Yeah, they have to record every call that
I'm
comes
Russ
into the
Outcalt.
office.
I'm a constituent of yours living in Holly Springs, North Carolina. And I'm a member of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Raleigh. And I'm calling you on behalf of the faith community to support investments that will expand clean, renewable energy, improve resilience as our climate disasters worsen, and protect our land and water. I'm very concerned as a person of faith about what is happening to creation and the communities in North Carolina that are threatened by climate change. Specifically, I'm asking you to support a budget that delivers clean, renewable energy investments, green jobs, and justice to communities across the country and curbs the carbon pollution that is driving the climate crisis. Thank you so much, and I hope you act on this.
Russ, we got to hear that whole conversation. You were unmuted, and that was a perfect way to end this hour of action. Thank you so much to everyone. I have like chill bumps all over. That was beautiful. Such a great example. I think I'm gonna go outside and cry a little bit because I'm so happy. So if we keep this up, if we are loud and proud and really showing our faithful actions, we can make all the difference in the world. And I believe we will win. So blessings upon you all. Be well, spread the news. We might do this next week and I'll try to give you more updates. We should have updates on where the bills are moving, and thanks for showing up. So see many of you tonight on the CCT call, and be well and go in peace.
Thanks, Susanna. Bye.
Thank